Aileen Wuornos sat across from investigators, her hands cuffed but her voice steady as she calmly confessed, not to one, but to 7 murders. The room was silent, the air thick with disbelief, as she recounted her crimes with a chilling lack of remorse. Her words were matter-of-fact, almost detached, as if she were describing someone else's life. She claimed each killing was self-defense, insisting she was fighting for her life every time. According to Aileen, every encounter was a struggle for survival, a desperate attempt to escape men who, she said, meant her harm. She painted herself as the victim, forced to kill or be killed, her voice trembling only when she described the fear she felt. The details were graphic, her conviction chilling. Investigators listened in stunned silence as she described the violence, the moments leading up to each killing, and the aftermath. Her accounts were vivid, painting a picture of chaos and bloodshed on the lonely roads of Florida. 7 men, all picked up along Florida highways, all dead. Each victim was a stranger, lured by the promise of company or a ride, only to meet a violent end. The highways became hunting grounds, the scenes of unspeakable acts that would haunt investigators for years. Was she a desperate survivor or a cold-blooded predator? The question haunted everyone in the room. Detectives wrestled with her story, torn between sympathy for her troubled past and horror at her actions. The line between victim and villain blurred, leaving only uncertainty. The evidence, bodies left in the woods, suggested a serial killer at work. Each crime scene told its own story. A life ended, a secret buried among the trees. The brutality of the murders left no doubt that something dark had taken hold of Aileen Wuornos. America was about to become obsessed with her story. News outlets splashed her face across front pages, and the public was captivated by the mystery of the woman behind the murders. The case became a media sensation, sparking debates about justice, mental health, and the nature of evil. Aileen's hunting ground, lonely highways, where she posed as a hitchhiker or sex worker. She blended into the shadows, using her vulnerability as a weapon, drawing in men who never suspected the danger that awaited them. The open road became a place of fear, a symbol of her unpredictable violence. Beneath her exterior was a rage forged by years of abuse. Her life had been marked by pain, betrayal, and abandonment, each scar shaping the woman she became. The anger simmered just below the surface, erupting in moments of deadly violence. Each man who stopped saw her as vulnerable, never suspecting the danger. They saw only a woman in need, not the storm of fury and desperation that lay beneath. For them, a simple act of kindness would become a fatal mistake. To understand the 7 men who died, you have to understand the woman who pulled the trigger. Her story is one of tragedy and violence, a life shaped by cruelty and survival, culminating in a series of crimes that shocked the nation. And her story began long before the first shot was fired. To truly grasp the darkness that unfolded on those highways, we must look back to the beginning, to a childhood marked by neglect, a life spent searching for love, and a journey that would end in infamy. Born in Michigan in 1956, Aileen Wuornos never stood a chance. Her father was a convicted child molester who died in prison. Her mother abandoned her as an infant. Raised by abusive grandparents, Aileen endured violence and sexual abuse. By 15, she was homeless, surviving in the woods, turning to petty crime and sex work just to eat. The streets became her home, and men her only source of income. Years of abuse and abandonment hardened her, teaching her that the world was hostile. This isn't an excuse, but it's the backdrop for the violence that would follow. Her rage and distrust simmered, waiting for a spark. That spark would ignite on Florida's highways, with devastating consequences. Adulthood brought Aileen no relief, just more drifting, more crime. She wandered from town to town, never able to settle, always searching for a place to belong. The world seemed to close its doors to her, and she learned to survive on the margins, doing whatever it took to get by. The pain of her childhood never left her, shaping every decision she made and every relationship she tried to build. She married briefly, hoping for stability, but her temper and deep-seated instability ended it within weeks. The marriage was a desperate attempt to find normalcy, but Aileen's wounds ran too deep. Arguments turned explosive, and trust was impossible to build. She left as quickly as she had arrived, feeling more isolated than ever. Florida's highways became her territory, working as a sex worker where danger was constant. Each night brought new risks: violence, exploitation, and the threat of arrest. She learned to read people quickly, to sense danger before it struck, but the fear never truly left her. The road was both her workplace and her prison. In the late 1980s, she met Tyria Moore, and for a moment found love and a reason to come home. Tyria was a rare source of comfort, someone who saw past Aileen's rough edges. Their relationship offered a fragile hope, a chance at happiness, however fleeting. But their life was funded by Aileen's sex work, creating constant tension. Money was always tight, and the stress of survival weighed heavily on them both. Arguments over bills and jealousy simmered beneath the surface, threatening to tear them apart. Financial desperation pushed her to the edge. Every day was a struggle to keep the lights on and food on the table. The pressure mounted, and Aileen felt trapped by circumstances she couldn't escape. She lived a double life, loving partner at home, trying to create moments of normalcy and warmth, hardened sex worker on the road, forced to hide her pain behind a mask of toughness. The contrast between her two worlds was stark, and the strain of keeping them separate took its toll. The anger from her past and the daily humiliations built to a breaking point. Years of abuse, rejection, and struggle boiled beneath the surface, erupting in moments of rage and despair. She felt invisible, unheard, and pushed to her limits. She was a powder keg, and the men she met were too close to the fuse. Each encounter was a gamble, and the line between victim and aggressor blurred with every passing day. The fragile life she built with Tyria was about to shatter. The pressures of survival, love, and violence collided, threatening to destroy the only connection she had left. Soon, Aileen Wuornos would become a household name for all the wrong reasons. Her story would shock the nation, but behind the headlines was a woman shaped by pain, longing for acceptance, and ultimately consumed by the darkness she could never escape. The murders began with Richard Mallory, a 51-year-old electronics store owner. Aileen claimed Mallory assaulted her, and she shot him in self-defense. His body was found 2 weeks later, shot multiple times. At first, police saw it as an isolated homicide, but Mallory's criminal past and attempted rape conviction gave some weight to Aileen's story. Was it survival or a convenient excuse for murder? Whatever happened, Aileen had crossed a line. She had a gun, and she'd used it. For the next year, 6 more men would meet the same fate. The damsel of death had begun her reign. After Mallory, the killings escalated. Between May and November 1990, 6 more men vanished, bodies dumped near highways. David Spears, Charles Carskadden, Peter Seams, Troy Burris, Dick Humphreys, and Walter Antonio, all victims. The violence grew more brutal with each killing. Law enforcement struggled to connect the dots across jurisdictions. The media dubbed the killer the highway hooker, fueling public fear. A multi-agency task force formed, desperate to stop the murders. The idea of a female serial killer was almost unthinkable. Investigators chased a phantom who could blend in, gain trust, and strike. The state of Florida was on edge, waiting for the next move. The open road had become a hunting ground. The break in the case came from a pawnshop slip. Aileen had pawned items stolen from her victims, leaving a thumbprint behind. When Peter Seams' car crashed, witnesses described the female driver. Police sketches hit the media, and Tyria Moore recognized Aileen. Terrified, Tyria called police and agreed to cooperate. Investigators now had a name and an insider. On January 9, 1991, police arrested Aileen at the Last Resort bar. There was no dramatic standoff, just a quiet arrest on a weapons charge. Aileen had no idea her run was over. The highway hunter was caught. The world was about to hear her story, and it would be stranger than anyone imagined. In custody, Aileen Wuornos sat in a cold, sterile interrogation room, her hands cuffed tightly in front of her. At first, she denied everything, refusing to admit to any involvement in the string of murders that had shocked the nation. The detectives pressed her for hours, but she remained silent, her face a mask of defiance and exhaustion. The turning point came when police threatened to charge her lover, Tyria Moore, as an accomplice. The thought of Tyria facing prison time broke through Aileen's defenses. Desperate to protect the only person she truly cared about, Aileen agreed to confess, but only if Tyria was granted full immunity. Her love for Tyria outweighed her own fear of punishment. In a series of recorded phone calls and interviews, Aileen finally admitted to killing 7 men. She insisted, again and again, that each killing was an act of self-defense, claiming the men had tried to assault or harm her. She painted herself as a victim, a woman forced to fight back against a world of predatory men. Her words were raw, emotional, and sometimes contradictory, but she never wavered from her story of survival. When her first trial began for the murder of Richard Mallory, the courtroom was packed with reporters and onlookers. The case quickly became a media sensation, with every detail splashed across headlines. The prosecution painted Aileen as a cold-blooded killer, motivated by greed and rage, while the defense argued she was a deeply damaged woman, shaped by a lifetime of abuse and trauma. They pleaded for understanding, describing the horrors she had endured since childhood, hoping for a shred of mercy from the jury. But the jury didn't buy her story. The evidence was overwhelming, and her confessions left little room for doubt. On January 27, 1992, Aileen Wuornos was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. Over the next year, she would receive 6 more death sentences for her other crimes. The weight of her actions, and her own words, sealed her fate. She was led away in shackles, her future now confined to the walls of death row. Her confessions, recorded and transcribed, became the cornerstone of the prosecution's case, leaving no doubt about her guilt. In the end, Aileen hoped to save Tyria, but in doing so, she condemned herself to death. Aileen Wuornos would go down in history as one of America's most notorious female serial killers, her name forever linked to infamy and tragedy. Her story, a haunting tale of violence, love, and desperation, became legend, captivating the public and inspiring countless books, films, and debates for years to come. The Wuornos case became a media circus: female serial killer, tragic past, lesbian love affair. Aileen became a morbid celebrity, selling her story to filmmakers and authors. The frenzy turned her into a caricature, monster, damsel of death. Films and documentaries, especially Monster, forced audiences to see the damaged person behind the headlines. Years on death row took a toll. Aileen's story changed. She recanted her self-defense claims, admitting to killing for robbery. She fired her lawyers, dropped appeals, and demanded execution. Was this the real Aileen, or a woman broken by isolation? Some saw proof of guilt, others saw a desperate end. Her wish was granted, her execution date was set. The story was nearly over, but the questions remained. On October 9, 2002, Aileen Wuornos was executed by lethal injection. She declined a last meal, choosing only coffee. Her final words were bizarre and defiant, promising to return with Jesus. Her death brought closure for some, but her story still resonates. Wuornos challenged stereotypes about serial killers and forced hard questions about abuse, poverty, and violence. For the victims' families, the pain remains. The highways are still there, forever marked by tragedy. Aileen's life was a tragedy that consumed 7 others. Her story is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can hide in plain sight.